Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today, and let me tell you, this one's a doozy.
Oh, yeah.
U.S. and Russia. Things are, well, they're getting kind of spicy. We're talking potential conflict over Ukraine.
Ukraine, huh?
Yeah, and we've got a fresh article from the New York Post. Just hit the presses today, February 13th, 2025. Get this, the headline screams, Vance threatens Russia with sanctions and military action if Putin doesn't agree to Ukraine deal.
Wow.
Right? So basically, we got to figure out what's going on between these two global powerhouses. What is Vance proposing? What's this whole deal about? And most importantly, what does it mean for all of us?
Definitely a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. One thing that jumps out right away is Vance's stance. He's not messing around threatening Russia with both sanctions and military action if Putin doesn't accept a deal in Ukraine. That's a pretty strong message, wouldn't you say?
It is. It is. Really puts the pressure on Russia. We haven't really seen this kind of approach. Well, at least not recently.
So you're saying this is a big departure from how previous administrations handled things?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's a lot more, how should I say it? A lot more upfront, possibly signals a shift in U.S. foreign policy, maybe moving towards a more, assertive, maybe even confrontational stance.
Makes you think, doesn't it? What do you think this means for Putin then? I mean, with that kind of pressure, what can he even do?
Well, it's a tough spot, right? Putin's kind of forced to choose now. Either he accepts whatever this deal is, even if it's not in Russia's best interest, or
Or,
or he faces some serious consequences. We're talking about potential sanctions that could cripple Russia's economy and, well, the possibility of military action. And that's a whole other can of worms.
yeah, the article mentions a deal, but doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty. What's the deal? What's on the table?
Right. So the article's pretty vague on the specifics, doesn't really give us the details, but it's clear there's some sort of agreement being proposed about Ukraine that Putin hasn't, well, agreed to yet.
Ah, so that's the sticking point.
Could be, yeah. Adds another layer of complexity to it all, doesn't it? Think about it. We're basically watching this high-stakes negotiation unfold right before our eyes, and who knows what'll happen. Things could go south real quick.
And remember, this news dropped today. This is like hot off the press stuff. Why now, though? Why release this threat now?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Timing is everything, right?
Right.
Releasing this publicly like this, it kind of forces Putin's hand. It's like, all right, buddy, you got to decide. You going to agree or are we going to have a problem? But of course, that could backfire too.
How so?
Well, think about it. Maybe this pushes Putin further into a corner. Maybe he digs in his heels even more, makes a peaceful resolution even harder to reach. It's a risky move for sure. Kind of like a diplomatic game of chicken.
Yikes. So let's talk about these sanctions. I got to admit, I'm not exactly fluent in international diplomacy lingo. What are sanctions exactly? And what kind of impact could they have on Russia? Like, in real terms?
Sure. Think of sanctions like economic punishments. They can be all sorts of things. Limiting access to international finance, freezing assets of individuals or companies, or even targeting specific industries like their energy sector or defense industry.
Oh, I see. So, like, hitting them where it hurts economically.
Exactly. And it can be pretty effective. Remember what happened back in 2014 after Russia went and annexed Crimea?
Vaguely. Refresh my memory.
Well, the international community hit them with some pretty heavy sanctions back then, and it had a real impact on their economy. This time around, well, if the U.S. and its allies coordinate, these sanctions could be even tougher. We could see a much bigger impact.
Wow, okay. And then there's the military action threat. I know it's unlikely, but we got to talk about it. What would happen if things escalated that far? What would that even look like?
Oh, that's the nightmare scenario, isn't it? Military action, that's a whole other ballgame. We'd be talking about a huge escalation with, well, potentially catastrophic consequences. And not just for Russia and Ukraine, but for the whole world, really.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about two nuclear powers, right?
Exactly. That's the scary part. A full-blown conflict between those two, well, nobody wants to see that. It's a situation we all hope to avoid.
No doubt. So it's pretty clear Vance is taking a tough stance here, sending a message to Putin, to the world. What's your take on all this? What stands out to you?
Well, what fascinates me is that Vance's approach, it's a gamble. It could work. Maybe Putin backs down. Maybe things de-escalate. But it could also provoke a really dangerous response. We've got to keep our eyes peeled, see how Putin reacts in the next few days, weeks even. This is a turning point, not just for Ukraine, but for the whole world.
So basically, we've got a tense standoff, a secret deal, and a U.S. president who's not afraid to throw his weight around. Definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat. Before we wrap things up, I want to leave you all with something to think about. What do you think Putin will do? What factors is he weighing as he figures out his next move? The answer to that question, well, it could have ripple effects across the globe. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Stay tuned because, well, this story's far from over.
Absolutely not.
Thanks for listening.
See ya. JTOI.